Are you gonna eat that?
Yeah! 10-second nose rule.
Stop! You female hooligans!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our final YouTube exclusive of 2024. What a year it has been here on our podcasting channel. My name is Jerome Cuson. As of course, I'm always joined by Brian. Please leave a 4 or 5 star review on our podcast feeds on Apple and Spotify to get the algorithms going. This is a YouTube exclusive, so please like and subscribe. Click on that bell icon so you can get notifications about when new episodes are posted. We have done a series of episodes about various movies on our main feed, but here in the month of December, we have been going over some interesting and different Christmas specials, holiday specials. Today is probably our least Christmas connected. We have a Christmas character, but not necessarily holiday episode. We will be looking at one of the best adaptations of Scooby-Doo that has ever been created, that being Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, from about 12 years ago at this point. It ran 2 seasons, 52 episodes. It is a high recommendation on my part, and I recommended it to Brian, and Brian has mainlined basically the entire 2 seasons. He's saving himself. He's got a few episodes left, and he will be watching those on the last day of this year, 2024. And Brian, I am happy that you listened to me, and I am glad that you are thoroughly enjoying the show.
All hail, Jerome. All hail. You were right. I should have been on this a long time ago, considering that this was like a 12-year-old show already by this point. But my goodness, I can't believe the writing on this show. This was perfect for Brian in his 20s. So this was a perfect time to come out, even though I didn't watch it at the time. I mean, this series basically has like the story of Monster of the Week mixed in with the overarching storyline of the 2 seasons combined, and they knew they had this end point, so they didn't bother to write a season 3 or 4 or 5. They wrote it specifically to end excuse me, at season 2. Which I think is a big plus, because once you know when you're stopping, you could write all the stuff and make it like this big build-up, and that's what it's going on right now. So I got like 8 episodes left, and there's this big mystery building up, so that's going to reveal at the end, and I'm excited. So it's going to be a fun New Year's Eve to watch that. But man, this show, I mean, they did episodes based on like Big Trouble in Little China, episodes based on In the Mouth of Madness, which is a John Carpenter 90s classic that I recently watched, and my goodness, like I can't believe they wrote this show for like the smart marks and didn't even focus on the kids. Like it's less so about the kids stuff and more so about the smart mark stuff. If you grew up watching the show and grew up watching all these different pop culture genres like horror and sci-fi and Twin Peaks and all these different things, and then somehow it rewards you by the end of each episode. It's like it rewards you by drawing you more into the overall mystery and giving you a satisfactory ending with the Monster of the Week at the same time. So I think this show is just really well done. It hooks me. Every episode is 22 minutes. Every episode is known as a chapter, which I really appreciate, considering that coming from like a Dragon Ball Z perspective, each week was a chapter, and because it was adapted from a manga, in this case, it's like a chapter in this giant book of 52 chapters for this giant story about the Scooby-Doo gang in this town. And my goodness, I can't believe how well the writing is in this show. And not only that, like the voice acting is really well done. Like this is the first time that Matthew Lillard takes the role of Shaggy in a series. Before he took over a couple years, did some animated movies, but this is the first time he took over for the show. And my goodness, he really fills that role in so well. He's a great apprentice, I guess, if you want to say, to Casey Kasem in terms of the Shaggy voice. But I think he fills his shoes very well. You can't really say so much about some of the Muppets characters that get kind of taken over their voice roles. You can kind of tell with like Kermit the Frog, it's a little different. But in this case, I think this voice of Shaggy has become so synonymous with Matthew Lillard now. I think the current generation kind of thinks of Matthew Lillard more so than Casey Kasem now as Shaggy, especially that helps with the movies as well. But I think just taking over the role voiceover wise has really done so many things for his career for the last 15 years. Like it's really like expanded his career. It's allowed him to do great TV stuff as well. So he's got this paycheck coming in from the Scooby-Doo stuff, as well as doing like other TV stuff that he wants to do. And I hope he doesn't come back in the Scream franchise because I think that'd be stupid. But I think Matthew Lillard did a tremendous job taking over in the role of Shaggy. And this is one of the last runs of Frank Welker as Fred Jones. I mean, it's crazy that he's been Fred Jones for like 40 years or something. And the guys just kind of embraced that role as well. Especially the other roles he's got, Transformers, all that kind of thing. But something about Fred Jones and Frank Welker just kind of go hand in hand in my head. And then, of course, you got Mindy Cohn from The Facts of Life playing Velma. She took over the role around this time as well. And then Greg DeLise as Daphne Blake. She's kind of one of the original voices as well. So you got all this like traditional original talent mixed with some of the new talent. And then you got these reoccurring roles with like some like, some B-level actors that you wouldn't expect to take these kind of roles, but just kind of knock it out of the park, like Tia Carrera as Fred's mom. And you got Gary Cole as the mayor, who's like the pseudo stepfather to Fred. And you also got like Udo Kier as like a talking bird that's evil as fuck. And you got Louis Black, who's like this angry middle-aged dude, but he's like in his 60s at this time when he did the role. So I like the idea that, Louis Black is known for his anger, right? But his anger just makes him so youthful because he's so energetic because of his anger that he can portray a 40-year-old in his having this midlife crisis who's also angry and makes them more youthful. So it's just really crazy how he pulled it off. And of course, Linda Cardellini coming back as Hot Dog Water, Marcy Fleach. They got these jokes in there too, like that Hot Dog Water, like kids kind of jokes that kind of stick. But the fact that Linda Cardellini again coming back because she was, the live action Velma, just all these great connections in the casting, I think just really helps as well. So all these things going for it, and you get this overall great show, which I'm not even done yet, but it just feels like they built up the story so well. Something about like they need these 6 planetary discs to come together. So you got these MacGuffins throughout the whole 2 seasons, kind of like the Infinity Stones. And once they come together, it unlocks this map or something, and the map is going to unlock some other deeper secret. So it's layers upon layers upon layers of mystery boxes, so to speak, in terms of the J.J. Abrams writing staff world. But I don't know. But the further I go down in this hole, the more I'm intrigued, because like there's this thing about how the town is like 200, 300 years old, and there's these old conquistadors that were protecting a treasure and all these different things and past different mystery teams throughout the history of the town. Like there's all these history, like somehow, some way, 4 teenagers always come together with a talking animal to solve mysteries in the town, and everyone's like, what's going on? Why does it happen every generation? So it's just crazy to think of these creative, mysterious things for the show. And I think it all just kind of pays off. And Jerome's already seen the finale years ago, but man, I can't wait. Like I'm specifically saving it for New Year's Eve because I feel like it's going to be this cool cathartic moment by the time I get to the last episode. It should be around midnight.
Yeah, I think the show has a pretty good payoff, and I think that if you're going to do 2 seasons and the way that it ends up, I think it ends pretty well. I'm not going to spoil it, of course, but you mentioned the cast. What a tremendous cast. And you've also got, Patrick Warburton as well, who is a veteran of these animated movies and shows. And I think when you bring it all together, I think you get something that is influenced by so many things. And the list of influences, I could go on forever. There is a lot of H.P. Lovecraft in the way that the show is designed. You've also got elements of Twin Peaks with some of the small town chaos, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a show which has kind of mentioned themselves being a Scooby Gang, and now this Scooby Gang is kind of dealing with horror elements. And basically, this show purports to be what if monsters were actually real? The cliche about Scooby-Doo is that, they get chased around by a quote-unquote monster, and eventually they expose that it is actually a person, and the person says that they would have gotten away with it if it weren't for the meddling kids and the dog. There's usually lots of cases. It's a very fun concept, and it is one that has had a lot of life to it throughout various TV shows over the years, through various movies, through various incarnations. This is an enduring concept for so many reasons, and it's pretty incredible to think about. Even to this day, you still got Scooby movies and Scooby TV shows being developed by Warner Brothers. But to me, what makes this show so special is the fact that they have this enduring concept, that they are telling this singular story, and that it builds and it builds and it builds. And You do get resolutions for every episode, but there is that ongoing plot, and I think that's what makes the show ultimately very successful, is that you are getting these payoffs. And I think I have to wonder if the creators of X-Men 97 did look at this show as a model in some ways, because although this is not nearly as horny or nearly as adult, you could definitely see where a show like X-Men 97 would take some of these ideas, because X-Men 97 is a more mature show than the X-Men animated series. Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated is a more mature show than many of its predecessors, if not all of its predecessors, as they tease romance between Velma and Shaggy that ultimately doesn't go anywhere, because of course Velma is not straight, probably. That's something that some of the media has only recently addressed. And of course, you have the ongoing relationship between Fred and Daphne as well. Here's the one thing I will say: the reason that I started the show, this was around the time that Velma came out on HBO Max, which is kind of Mindy Kaling's interpretation, and boy, is that show awful. But I was reading reviews of it; they were all saying, watch Mystery Incorporated instead. It's a much better show. So specifically, the reason that I started watching this was because of Velma coming out on Max, and this show is so much better because I think it still maintains the integrity of the characters. It still maintains the integrity of the show overall. And what I think is most impressive about this episode is that it really turns the entire element of Scooby-Doo on its ear, because typically it's always the kids that are trying to expose a monster. And in this case, the kids are actually revealed to be the monster, and they play with that quite well. And that originally, I thought that's why he would pick this episode.
Well, originally I chose the Be Cool Scooby-Doo episode, Christmas Carol spoof. But, we're not really big fans of Be Cool Scooby-Doo. I like some of the parts of the animation. I like the interpretation of Daphne in that one. But it doesn't hit as well as this show. So I chose Wrath of the Krampus, and it's kind of like overall some of the lists I was going through, like the number one Christmas-esque episode, even though this doesn't take place during Christmas time. This was actually released on August 15th. So they even make a joke about it. Like, he usually comes in the wintertime. What's going on here? So what it turns out to be is the reason the Krampus is out is because the Mystery Incorporated gang needed to distract the villains of the show, the previous Mystery Incorporated team from the 60s that also incorporates Fred's parents, who are also evil, and they're manipulating Fred. So basically, it's kind of like this Ocean's 12 situation. I specifically say Ocean's 12 and not Ocean's 11 or 13 because those were straightforward. Ocean's 12 is the one where everyone got confused at the end because they didn't understand the ending, and it takes 2 or 3 watches to kind of figure out what actually happened, but it was a work on a work, basically. So they worked the bad guys into thinking that there is this Krampus around, and because this Krampus is around, the gang is distracted now, and they can easily just go in and take the other discs, because they have 3 each, right? There's 6 total, 3 with the bad guys, 3 with the good guys. So the big reveal at the end is that it was a robot under the Krampus disguise. What's going on? But they know they're being watched on camera. It's being spied on by the other group. So they put on this whole facade stating that there's this Krampus around. And once they reveal it's the robot, they send this video back to the bad guys saying, hey, we know what's going on, and then it becomes this Ocean's 12 explanation sequence of what happens, and it just shows you what actually happened, and they just made up this whole thing to distract the bad guys so they can send the robot back to the bad guys' lair and steal the other 3 discs. Now the good guys have all 6 discs together, Avengers style, Infinity Stones, and that's where we leave off, and then it's just like, oh shit. And then the next couple episodes, spoiler, they get it stolen back to the bad guys, obviously, because they need that, up and down, kind of back and forth. But it was just kind of funny that it was like, wow, they turned this like Christmas episode that doesn't belong in the middle of August, turn it on its ear by making the monster revealed to be actually part of like a plot by the Scooby-Doo gang, and not only that, but do it in a way where it's like Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12-esque kind of like booking, so to speak. So I was just impressed overall at all the references and all these little things going on. And not only that, there was like these weird like references to like, I want to say the Time Machine from 1963. because there's this joke about when the Krampus comes around, he turns the dude's hair into like long white hair, and then Patrick Warburton drops this line about, I look like a guy from the center of the earth who's like a magician or something. So I was like, dude, is that a deep cut reference to the time machine with the Warlocks or the Morlocks in the middle of the earth? Because that's exactly what happens to the Morlocks in the middle of the earth. They grow their hair white straight down. So I don't know. There's always these random references in the show that just kind of go over your head, or you have to go back and figure out, was that a reference to so and so? And there's more references layered on top of more references in the show that you're just going to be blown by. So that was one of them. That's like the perfect example of that. And now, the Krampus is not even a thing. And, it was just a rouge just to get to the bad guys. And it's, I thought that was hilarious. And the idea of the Krampus, of course, is this Christmas evil villain. If you watch Red 1, he's Santa's brother, apparently. But yeah, I think this taking that idea, turning it on its ear, putting it in August, it's like everything you're not supposed to do with a Christmas special. And technically, is it a Christmas special? I say so because the Krampus represents Christmas, and they talk about evil children getting their comeuppance. And I like that little scene at the beginning where that asshole kid is like playing music in the quiet street, and everyone just can't. It's weird. They can't tell the kid to go away, or they can't man up to discipline the kid, which I think is a social commentary on people seeing like kids like being disobedient in public and the parent not doing anything. And then all of a sudden the Krampus comes in and shuts that kid up and turns his hair white and shit. So I thought that was a really subtle commentary on kids in public and their parents not doing anything about it. And of course the Krampus doesn't like those kind of kids anyway. But yeah, it was just overall a good setup. And the Charlie the Robot, I believe he is. I think that's a reference to all the way back to the original series. And they actually referenced the original series by going through like this little part of this museum that shows all the other people they caught before in their previous adventures. And you see it's all the villains from the original series that they caught. So that, again, just all these references that go back to the original series, whether or not you can actually go and watch this series and think it's a sequel series to the original. You can watch this series as if it's its own thing. You can tie it into the Scooby-Doo multiverse like I've done before, because the Scooby-Doo multiverse does exist because the movies take place in different universes. Like I've seen 2 different versions of Fred's dad, maybe 3 at this point. So that's the multiverse for you. But again, this episode is just anti-Christmas, but I think it really, like, the theme of it behind it is like the Krampus and, kids being fucking little bastards, man, and just get on the good list and on the bad list.
For sure. And the one thing I will say, I think what makes this episode work within the context of everything else going on is that it really does forward the story in a pretty big way, because we know that the Scooby Gang is onto the villains, and I think it's a really important development. So it's not just that it's a Christmas episode or a Christmas adjacent episode, but there's a lot of really important stuff that happens, and this kind of sets up the rest of the series. The second half of season 2, these final few episodes. So a high recommendation. I don't know that it's the most Christmassy of the episodes that we have discussed this month, but a high recommendation to watch this episode. But really, you do need to start from the very beginning. I don't think if you just watch this episode on its own, I don't know that you're going to have to you'll be able to fully appreciate it. I know that I haven't watched this in quite some time, and I had to kind of readjust myself, read some Wikipedia before starting this episode, because it definitely is something where you're kind of in the middle of something as opposed to kind of a beginning, middle, and end.
For sure. And then, of course, they drop these little hints for the finale that I'm kind of setting myself up for. They mentioned Planet X, and God, Planet X is such a conspiracy theory driven thing. That's a whole different rabbit hole. And it's just, they opened that book up, and I was just like, good God, they've opened up this part of the universe. Now we're doing the whole Planet X thing. So good God. So who knows what's going to happen in this show? And then they're talking about Babylonian prophecies and stuff like that. Sumerian text. It's almost word for word from like Ghostbusters 84. You know what I'm saying? When they're just trying to figure out what's going on and kind of thing. Like with what is going on in the town and blah, blah, blah. So I like that little like nod to Ghostbusters in terms of like these ancient gods coming from beyond kind of thing. So who knows what's going to happen? I'm expecting a Ghostbusters type ending to this show, but who knows? But I'll give a follow up in the coming years, or in the coming weeks, I guess, at the beginning of the 2025 episodes. But man, I think overall we need to do a breakdown of this, maybe like parts 1 and 2 of season 1, parts 1 and 2 of season 2, something like that, because there's just so much going on. And I mentioned like the references and like the fact that like I forget his name, but the guy, the star of Reanimator, he's like a star of different like H.P. Lovecraft type movies. He plays the H.P. Lovecraft type author in this universe. So, and he comes back a couple times as well. So they just the casting again on point for the audience they're trying to appeal to. And it's just it's crazy to me that this was 2010 it started, and like I'm looking on MeTV Tunes now, the new local station that I guess everyone's picked up in their local town for all the old classic cartoons now that Cartoon Network refuses to show. And of course, Mystery Incorporated has a block on Sundays now for 2 hours every Sunday, 4 episodes. So my goodness, in my mind, I think this show is so fresh and new, yet it's already in the retro Cartoon Network. So there you go, Jerome.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, there have been like 3 shows since, including the Velma show that was canceled after 2 seasons, and that might be one of the worst adaptations of all time. But Warner Brothers doesn't really know what they're doing, so it's very tough to say like what the future of Scooby-Doo is, and we will see how things develop with Warner's and HBO Max and all that jazz. But this is definitely a show that is kind of self-contained, and if you can watch it on MeTV, if you can watch it through Max or whatever your platform of choice is, you should do so. A high recommendation to enjoy what is a very, very good show. And with that, we are done with our YouTube specials for this month. I'm sure we will come up with some ideas for next year. I don't know if there will be a season 2 of X-Men 97 in 2025 or if that's going to be 2026, but I'm sure that we will have some ideas for what we are doing. But for this week, definitely go to the main feed, check out our 90-minute episode on Eyes Wide Shut. We had a couple of guests on that show, so definitely check that out. And next week we'll be doing our top 10 of 1994. And I know Brian is very excited to see what movie that I've been teasing him with that is going to be on my top 10 list, but that I have not officially mentioned. Plus, all of the obvious choices, I would say, are going to be well represented as well.
That includes Time Cop. I'm joking. That's a recurring joke I'm doing.
Does it though?
Listen, Time Cop
Anything
is not,
else, Brian?
but it's going to be an honorable mention. That's all I'm going to say. I will have a list of honorable mentions as well. Movies that are not good, but they're nostalgic. Let's just say that. I'll keep it at a minimum. But listen, 94 also had the Flintstones, and like somehow that movie still sticks out in our head despite not living up to expectations of the show. But man, John Goodman was like the best.
It's fine. Like it's not terrible. But again, the issue that I always have with Scooby-Doo and with the Flintstones is like there's a reason they're animated. I don't like the Scooby-Doo live action movies because they're not good, because they're better off when they're animated. That's the fundamental problem, and I feel the same way about the Flintstones as well. It's very hard to switch mediums, I would say.
That's just a prime example of my nostalgia list that I'll come up with as well, and then I'm also doing, again, extra credit. I don't know. I may also watch Clear and Present Danger. I don't know how I'm going to fit that in, but I definitely want to watch Heavenly Creatures and Pompoko to kind of pad my list out. I don't need to watch Clerks again, folks, but again, Clerks was also 1984, so it's going to be a hell of a list and a hell of a discussion.
That is for sure. So for Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again on the main feed next week.